All right. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Dropping the Hammer Racing Hour. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, Alex Gray here along with Michael Klein. Just the two of us today. And Michael, this is the last podcast for you in where you're living now, isn't it?
That is right. I am moving to Indianapolis next week.
Yeah, huge opportunity for you, especially. There's plenty of opportunities in Indianapolis when it comes to racing. And I'm still 2 hours away, so it's a pretty short drive.
Oh, yeah, man. Welcome anytime.
Yeah. That, and you'll have a racetrack, an active NASCAR track close to you again.
Hell yeah.
We lost ours a few years ago, so...
Still salty about it.
I am too, I admit. But anyhow, For me, I gotta stay professional about it regardless. But there's a lot to talk about here today. Penalties. Bristol Dirt coming up. We just had Coda in Richmond. All sorts of stuff. Oh, also, we're going to Bristol. We're gonna go down to Bristol Sunday.
It's Bristol, baby.
It's Bristol, baby. We're gonna go to the dirt race, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the future, perhaps. Because you thought we've seen so many changes now. There may be more coming on the horizon when it comes to NASCAR. But we'll get to that. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is, first of all, Hendrick's penalties from, oh, God, was it Coda?
It was from Phoenix.
Phoenix, duh. Okay, I get my races mixed up. I need more sleep. Anyway,
You're good.
So, yeah, Hendrick's penalties got reversed, only for them to get penalties back. It's been a rather bizarre situation. There's been a lot of talk about, like, is NASCAR, really dropping the hammer on Hendrick? No pun intended. So yeah.
Yeah, if I'm Hendrick, I'm telling my mechanics, stay the fuck away from our parts.
Yeah, like, what are you guys doing?
Do not mess with them.
Yeah, so Hendrick got this time it was just the 24 and the 48. Tough blow, because obviously William Byron has been lights out so far this season. He's off to the best start of his Cup career.
Right.
Honestly, fantastic driving out of him. So yeah, they were hit with L1 level penalties. Violations were modifications made to the greenhouse area of the race cars. So Byron and Bowman, after they got points back, were docked 60 points and 5 playoff points. Brian Camp, Byron's crew chief, Greg Ives, they have been fined $75,000, and they have been suspended for 2 races. However,
wow, the interim crew chief has been suspended. I don't think I've ever heard of that happening before.
Me neither. That's absolutely insane, honestly. Like, to see the interim crew chiefs. I mean, that's like an NFL team where, your starting quarterback's out for the year. Then your backup gets hurt the next day. Then you go to your third string. Now you have to throw in, like, one of your wide receivers as quarterback, and things just go hectic. It's kind of like that. So let's see. So, yeah, with all that, they're going to be... Hendrick released a statement. We'll be reviewing the penalties issued today by NASCAR, and we'll determine the next step following the race at Bristol. So, yeah, not only Hendrick was smacked with penalties, Colleague, their penalty got amended under appeal. They had its L2 penalty amended on Wednesday by the National Motorsports Appeals Panel with a reduction of the point penalty. So, I guess the panel ruled that Colleague Racing and the 31 team of Justin Haley, they violated the rules with a modified hood louver. I hope I pronounced that right. But amended the... Louver. Thank you. Hood louver. Okay. But amended the penalty from 100 driver and owner points to 75. And then, of course, the 4-race suspension of crew chief Trent Owens was upheld, as was the loss of 10 playoff points. And, and this has been a thing since the Next Gen debuted. We saw this last year with Brad Keselowski, and we saw this with Michael McDowell last year. NASCAR is literally saying, F around and find out. Don't play around with this stuff. They're going to hit you hard. I almost come to a point where, like, what if they start talking about, I don't know if this is too extreme, but what if NASCAR finally just goes, you keep this up, we'll take away your playoff waiver. You won't be able to race in the playoffs. Which could...
I mean, it's in the rule book, so it's not completely out of the question for them to do that. They could very well go and, just say, okay, you keep this up, we warned you, and now you are no longer playoff eligible.
Right, yeah.
How far it takes for them to do that, I don't know.
Yeah,
but I mean, Hendrick's already at 2 strikes, or at least the 48 and the 24 team are.
Yeah, Hendrick's got to be careful. Obviously, they're a great team, but they got to be careful.
Yeah, and that would be a huge blow for both Byron and Bowman, because they have both been really good this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one likes to talk about this, but Bowman is leading the point standings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously he's not the leader because he doesn't have any wins, but if you're going by points alone, he's the leader.
Yeah, which means obviously he's been really consistent so far. He's been great. Really, all of Hendrick has done a good job. Of course, obviously, they're minus Chase Elliott right now with his injuries. But Josh Berry, first of all, let me talk about him. He's doing a good job. He's doing a really good job. Obviously, the first race at Vegas, he kind of got thrown in there and turned laps. But after that, got a couple top 5, top 10 finishes. Got a runner-up at Richmond. Extremely impressive. Could that also help his value to maybe him becoming a cup driver at some point, like a full-time cup driver?
Absolutely. These kind of performances are definitely going to get the notice of team owners and say, hey, we want this guy on our team. It's just going to be a matter of finding the funding to do that. But It will definitely put him on teams' radars, possibly even Hendrick's.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, I think that's the biggest issue right now is with Hendrick. Obviously, I think they're set. They got 4 championship-capable drivers. Maybe, because he's talked about it, does Junior finally pull the trigger and open a cup team? And Josh Berry's a driver. They have a good relationship there that goes back years. Or maybe Stuart Haas, the 4 cars available, who takes over for Harvick. Obviously, it looks like Busch is not going to return to that team, so that's a problem there with funding. But, there's plenty of opportunities, and Josh Berry continues to do a fantastic job in the Xfinity Series, and, he's doing good. He's doing good, and it's just great to see him get an opportunity like this. Obviously, I hate it for Chase Elliott to see this happen to him. Just an unfortunate accident. But obviously, still, when stuff like that happens, it could be a great opportunity for drivers. Look at Bubba Wallace. 2017, Amarola got hurt at Kansas. Bubba got a few races, did a good job, became a full-time driver. Look where he is now. So, you never know what could happen.
Right.
Yeah, so...
I mean, even with Bowman, too.
Yeah.
I mean, Junior gets hurt, he comes in, performs with super sub performance, and eventually ends up in the ride.
Yeah, and not only that, he ended up technically replacing Johnson, so he replaced pretty much a Hall of Famer and a soon-to-be Hall of Famer. I mean, Johnson's going to be one, no doubt. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, really, you have to... honestly, Kyle Larson really replaced Johnson. I mean, basically, that 48 car now is what was the 88 team, and they just swapped crews and numbers, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or no, they didn't swap crews, they swapped numbers. Sorry, that's my bad.
It's all good. Sorry I got off topic there. Another thing I wanted to bring up with the penalties anyway is Denny Hamlin. He's been very, very, very vocal. He pretty much kind of criticized NASCAR. He was kind of livid about how he feels that NASCAR is making up the rules as they go. Amid the recent string of penalties issued to different drivers and teams, including Hamlin himself. Obviously, there was also that incident with him and Chastain where I don't think he should have done that moment where he went on his podcast and said, yeah, I wrecked Chastain. I'm like, I don't think you should be saying that out loud. But,
yeah. I mean, you just can't be doing stuff like that. I mean, it's one thing to go out and just wreck somebody, but to, brag about it on your podcast, that's just, you're basically putting NASCAR in a position where they have to act. I mean, you even saw this with Bubba Wallace a few years ago.
Right.
So it's like, just don't admit to it, or I wouldn't even do it in the first place. I don't believe in wrecking cars, but don't go on your podcast and brag about it, because it's like, when I see it, if you do that, you have to expect what NASCAR is going to throw down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just sitting there like, you got to be careful. And obviously, yeah, let me see here. So for some context, basically the appeals panel made the decision on the previous Hendrick case that we talked about. Let me see here. They came to the conclusion that the points penalties to the individual drivers and teams were too harsh, not reflective of the infraction itself. A fair conclusion was given of what the infraction was. So Bob Pockers kind of posted like, hey, this is, appeals panel can now only modify a penalty if a points penalty is issued, and it must keep a points penalty within the range in the rule book for level of penalty. And Hamlin, not too pleased. He tweeted yesterday, wait, what? This started today. What the, what? You can't do this in the middle of an appeal. So, yeah, he, let's see here. Yeah, he had his $50,000 fine and his 25-point penalty upheld upon appeal to admitting to intentionally wrecking Ross Chastain at Phoenix. Didn't take too kindly to those changes, and basically he's been kind of getting on NASCAR a lot, accusing him of making up the rules as they go. So,
Which, I mean, to be fair, NASCAR does kind of do that, but at the same time, it's like, what sport doesn't do that? They take what they see isn't working and they fix it. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with this, or at least with the timing of it, but at the same time, it's like, that's something that happens everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I think Denny's got to be careful here with some of the stuff he's saying. It could get him in trouble. It could, be a bad luck on him as a team owner, because he's owning a team with Michael Jordan with a lot of big sponsors. So, it's just something to think about. Yeah. And, of course, no penalty came his way for this, but he also, at one point during the Richmond race, did take out J.J. Yaley, who, of course, at that point, I think was a lap car. I think he was driving for Rick Ware at that point. So it's just kind of like, oh, come on
now. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something to keep an eye on for sure. And just, you got to be careful here. So, yeah, moving on to that. Let's head into this weekend, obviously. Third edition of the Bristol Dirt race. They started this in 2021, and all 3 years now, the weekend has been affected by weather. Today's Friday, the track activities got canceled. Luckily, though, Sunday, the weather's going to be great. That's what I've seen. But the last 2 years, 2021, both races got moved to Sunday. They were not able to do any heats. It was just too muddy, because after one lap, all the trucks were just covered in mud. And then 2022, better, but still, of course, we're hit by some rain delays and stuff like that. So, it'll be interesting to see how the 2023 edition goes, especially with the Cup cars. It's going to be interesting to see, because Marcus Smith of Speedway Motorsports came out today, and he basically talked about, the future, and basically he kind of discussed that he has not made a decision about whether the Sprague Bristol race will be on dirt or not next year. So, obviously this was a big experiment, and I'd say it's been fun. It's been fun to watch. It's been a good experiment, trying something different, because before 2021, the Cup Series last ran on dirt in 1970. So I think it's been a fun experiment. I know some people have been kind of like, if they're going to do this, do it on an actual dirt track. But then, of course, people bring up Eldora and Knoxville, and you got to think, well, if they're hosting the Cup Series, they got to make sure that they got the infrastructure to do it, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I would say I've been one of those people. I would rather see the Cup Series at a track like Eldora or Knoxville, but at the same time, it's like you got to understand some of these tracks may not have the infrastructure to do that or the facilities to do it. Right. So, I mean, I think Eldora could probably pull it off, if I'm being honest. Knoxville, I don't know. But Eldora has plenty of stands, plenty of hillside seating. I honestly think they could make it work.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, they maybe North Wilkesboro. I know originally they were going to do some dirt racing there when they brought it back last year. Of course, they're prepping for the All-Star race, which, by the way, we'll talk about that too. The All-Star race format, they released that yesterday. So that's not the only thing that Marcus Smith talked about. He also said that he anticipates SMI and COTA agreeing to have a race in 2024. Obviously, it's like an agreement, and it's an option year for SMI to lease the track for the NASCAR weekend, so like, renting the track and stuff like that, because they don't really own the track. I will say this right now. Of all the schedule changes that have taken place, all these new venues coming in, COTA has been one of the best decisions. I think it's great. Austin's a great market. It's a big city. You got San Antonio nearby. It's a world-class venue that was, of course, built for Formula One. And I think NASCAR should be there almost permanently. You talk about more road courses, and I think COTA's great. And not only that, I know this is going to sound off topic and different, but I want to bring this up. COTA hosts the U.S. Grand Prix. Formula One is starting to, trickle into the American business dollars a little bit more, and plus, they want to do more street circuits. I think that's quite apparent. They debuted Miami last year. They're going to do Las Vegas in November. And I hate to say this, but I have a theory that at some point they're going to kick COTA to the curb. And I think at that point, NASCAR can swoop in and say, hey, we'll take you in permanently full-time. Why not? That's just something to think about long term. And again, I think, COTA has been one of the best additions to the NASCAR schedule in recent years.
Well, certainly. I've enjoyed every race there so far.
Yeah, obviously the 2021 race was kind of weird because of the weather, but after that, we've had some good races, we've had some good finishes, and it's a great venue to go to. So I'm fingers crossed that SMI and NASCAR can work with COTA more beyond what looks like to be next year, and so on. Talk about that, because again, I just have this sneaking suspicion that at some point, Formula One's probably going to boot COTA and go to other fancy street circuits. At some point they're probably going to want to do New York, and I feel like at some point that if the Chicago street circuit deal falls through, obviously, if you still want to be in Chicago, there's Chicagoland, but, I'm telling NASCAR now, hey, go to New York. That could be your next street course. Get the biggest market.
Go to Kentucky.
Right? The two of us can hope, right? Or at least for IndyCar, and I can dive into that too, because IndyCar, a lot of people are saying we need more ovals, and the Texas race showed that. And the IndyCar, obviously a lot of people are not liking the way Texas is, but IndyCar put on a solid show, and I will say that. So, Adam Stern reported, I want to say last night, he reported that IndyCar is remaining in talks with state and local leaders in Wisconsin and Milwaukee about bringing a race back to the historic Milwaukee Mile, per people familiar. So that could be a huge deal there. Obviously, Milwaukee is also, I just realized, will be on the truck schedule this year. So, it's good to see that IndyCar is trying to invest into more ovals, because it's like, I get you want to do more road courses, but there's got to be a balance, and there's plenty of good ovals out there they could race on.
Yeah, certainly, like Kentucky.
we can only hope, because, if Texas can do it with IndyCar, heck, so can Kentucky, right? I think, I'll take it. I'll gladly take it. I wanted to bring that up since we kind of drifted into the IndyCar stuff and all that. So, yeah, IndyCar looking to go back to Milwaukee Mile, and we'll see where else they decide to go to in the near future.
Yeah, something else I think that we should bring up from this week, because, I think this has kind of probably been the big story of the week. It's been that the NASCAR teams have boycotted a quarterly meeting with NASCAR, which when I heard that, I was just thinking, wow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I almost forgot about that. Yeah, obviously that's been going on too. It has to go with talking about, the whole revenue ordeal and stuff that's, again, coming up with this TV deal, as I'm trying to pull up exactly what was talked about real quick. Here we go. Let's see. I found one quote, or a couple things. Joseph Strigley posted via The Athletic, though teams in NASCAR have reached out a point of relative satisfaction over a new venue sharing model that would see owners receive a greater share of venue, the charter system model remains a sticking point. According to a story published jointly by Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi, the issue stems from Jim France, the chairman of NASCAR, not wanting the charter system to become a permanent fixture. So there's some problems there, what looks like the charter system at this point.
Yeah, and that's been a hot topic ever since, it came about. I'm not going to lie, I've never always been a huge fan of it. I've always kind of felt like it kind of pushes some of the open teams out. But, when you hear from the teams and how much it helps them,
right?
I feel like, when you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, there's been recent more interest in teams wanting to look into a charter and open up a full-time Cup Series team and be guaranteed every race. And quickly, I will bring up something from Bob Pockris. Teams did boycott Team Owners Council meeting scheduled for the 5th, excuse me. This meeting wasn't necessarily to discuss the revenue distribution model, but typically is about initiatives in the sport. The boycott was a message about needing to make progress on the revenue distribution talks, too. So, well, that's something to keep an eye out for sure. As these constant changes keep happening, and this whole thing with the revenue distribution talks, the charter system, there's a lot to be discussed there, and we definitely need to keep an eye on it for sure. So yeah,
absolutely,
yeah. So let's see. Talking about tracks again. NASCAR Roots posted this. So race fans in Idaho will soon have a new NASCAR home track. Blue Valor Motorsports Park, located in Emmett, Idaho, is scheduled to open later this year, which, a new track, that's kind of like unheard of in this day and age, so that's super cool to see. And of course, out in a place like Idaho where maybe, racing's not as brought up about. Of course, I'm not as familiar with the Northwest region of the U.S., but still, I think it's great. There's a new short track being built, especially in somewhere like Idaho, somewhere you would not expect.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see that people out there are going to have some racing. I know they have Meridian Speedway. I'm not sure if that place is still open, so having this other place they can go to is also going to be really good for that whole community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to see, and hopefully it could bring a lot of revenue to the area and bring in some new racing fans. Speaking of short tracks, let's talk about that all-star race format. So obviously this year it'll be held at North Wilkesboro. First time the Cup Series racing at the historic venue since 1996. It's definitely gonna be interesting to watch, an action-packed night. They've been working on a lot to get the track ready to host this event. So, here's the schedule. So Friday, there'll be practice, Friday, May 19th, practice, qualifying, and pit crew challenge. So pit crew challenge there on Friday. Saturday, May 20th, we got the truck race. And then All-Star Heat 1 and 2 will be hosted. And then Sunday, of course, you got the All-Star Open and the All-Star Race. So let me take a look here. So this is how they structure things here. So the pit crew challenge, qualifying will be based on pit stop time only. I see. So it's a 4-tire pit stop, no fuel. Results determine the starting lineups for the All-Star Heat races and the Open. The Heat races will be 60 laps each. The results of Heat 1 will set the inside row of the All-Star race, and Heat 2, the results from that race, will set the outside row of the All-Star race. So very much similar to the dual races at Daytona for the Daytona 500. Then you got the Open. That race will be 100 laps. There'll be a competition break on or around lap 40. The top 2 finishers will go to the All-Star race, and then there will be a fan vote winner. As usual, that will transfer to the All-Star race. The All-Star race field, obviously, points race winners from 2022 and 2023. Past All-Star race winners and NASCAR Cup champions are eligible. And then, of course, as previously mentioned, you got the ones from the Open and the fan vote winner who will advance. And then the All-Star race format for the $1 million that will be won by the winner. That's all that's on the line. No points, none of that. Just $1 million on the line. 200 laps. All laps count. Let's see here. Start on sticker tires. 3 additional sets in the pit box. All laps count. Overtime rules in effect. Competition break on or around lap 100. And then after the competition break, only 1 additional set of sticker tires may be used. And that is the formats for the 2023 All-Star race. And hopefully it'll be a fun weekend. It'll be a success. It'll be a good night there. Because this is NASCAR's 75th anniversary. It's going to pay a lot of homage to the past and the legends of the sport. To see this track come back. And, yeah, it's looks like it's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, because obviously there's been issues with the All-Star race in the past. A lot of people wanted it to get away from Charlotte. And then 2020, the COVID year, we had Bristol, which it was fun to have the All-Star race at Bristol, actually. And then, of course, the last 2 years have been at Texas. And obviously it was not received well at all. So bad to a point where right after that, controversial finish in last year's All-Star race, Texas Motor Speedway actually tweeted, "We're going to host again next year." And there was so much negative output or response from it, they deleted the tweet. And then you had Fox coming in and going, "Well, we want to see it get rotated. We want to see it go to these grassroots tracks." So, it'll be interesting to see how the All-Star race is handled in future years. And this could be the start of what we could expect in future years.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I love the idea of rotating them on grassroots tracks. Because it's like that opens the door for us to go to some of the legacy tracks like North Wilkesboro or Rockingham, maybe South Boston, and possibly get to see it branch out to other tracks like maybe Indianapolis Raceway Park. I can't wait to see how this could work for the sport.
Yeah, I think it could certainly work out well. Just to see, I'm mixing up my words, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that nets out. Obviously, as you mentioned, there's plenty of historic tracks they could certainly check out and go to. I'm intrigued to see how this all works out. So hopefully it'll be a success. Obviously, they announced this back in September of last year, and they've been working endlessly to make sure that this track is ready for the All-Star race, because it's going to be a sold-out crowd. It's going to be packed for sure. It's going to be one hot night. I can definitely say that.
One hot night, V2O.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see there. Speaking of the Cup Series, I know we talked about COTA earlier. It also been reported that Jenson Button really, really enjoyed racing in the Cup Series. He really enjoyed that race in general. I know he's got a couple more races planned as well. He has discussed the idea of, hey, maybe I might give this a full-time shot. He may be a full-time Cup driver in the near future.
I can't wait to see that if it happens. I was such a huge fan of Jenson Button when he was in Formula One, and so I cannot wait to see him hopefully get this opportunity to go full-time Cup. I'd be interested to see what team he does it with, but that would be so cool to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the late 2000s when we saw, all those big open wheel stars come over to NASCAR. We saw Max Pappas come in. We saw Patrick Compartier, Jacques Villeneuve, and of course he ran the 500 last year. We saw Juan Pablo Montoya and, a few other guys, Dario Franchitti, Danica Patrick even, try NASCAR and give it a shot. We're seeing that now, and I think the next-gen car has a lot to do with it. I'm trying to list every driver we see. Jordan Taylor, we've seen, obviously, Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen. We've seen Daniel Kvyat last year. We saw Mike Rockefeller. and other drivers, just giving this this next gen car a shot. And as I mentioned before, on my channel, Gray Speed Productions, I made a video last fall of, are we seeing another open wheel invasion? And it's starting to look like that. We're starting to see a lot more international stars and open wheel guys and sports car guys coming over to give NASCAR a shot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we very well could be. And I mean, I've also seen Scott McLaughlin expressing interest in this. So who knows when we'll see him in a Cup car.
Yeah, I mean, and then of course, Scott McLaughlin, he drives an Indy car. Who knows? Maybe, and I forgot Connor Daly too. How dare I? But hey, I mean, maybe he could run the double someday. The 500 and the 600. Kyle Larson's going to do that next year. So, there's there's a lot of potential there, and I'm really excited to see. And Elio Castroneves, I think he expressed some interest before. There was a time where we all thought maybe he'd drive the 500. Maybe he might drive Trackhouse's Project 91, which, again, I absolutely love that concept. It's a great concept that Justin Marks put there to give these guys a shot and say, hey, we're going to field this team just for these international stars to give NASCAR a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And not even just from open wheel. Like you said, we've seen Jordan Taylor come over.
Yep.
So far, I've heard Shane Van Gisbergen could very well be coming over. So we're seeing people from all forms of racing.
And that's good, because obviously, going back to the schedule talk earlier, Ben Kennedy said they'd like to have an international race at some point. And imagine what wonders that could do for NASCAR. If, and I'm not just talking Canada, Mexico. I'm talking about what if they decide to go to Europe? What if they decide to go back to Japan like they did in the 90s? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that could certainly tie a lot into it. So there's
I want to see NASCAR back in Japan. I mean, that was so cool. It's so cool to go back and see what they did back in the 90s. And, for anyone who doesn't know, me and Alex are both pretty big weeps. So, there's kind of that Japanese culture love there. So,
Certainly.
But, it's definitely a huge automotive. It's a huge automotive. What's the word for it?
Culture?
Market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Car culture there. So I think it would be a perfect match now to have some sort of NASCAR event in Japan, or maybe even see another series started up there, like the Euro series or the Mexico series. Just another international series somehow branching out into Japan. I think that would just be so great to see.
It would be cool for NASCAR to try to invest into like an Asian series and race in places like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and places like that. Because, there's a lot of history out there, especially in Japan. There's a lot of car culture there. You have Toyota, you have Mazda, you have Nissan, Honda. I can go on and on, Which, by the way, friendly reminder to those people who say, Toyota shouldn't be in NASCAR. Remember, they build a lot of their cars here in America. I used to live in the town, Georgetown, Kentucky, that builds a lot of them. So anyway, I'm just saying. So, yeah, and also there's a lot of great tracks. There's Fuji Speedway, there's Suzuka Circuit, there's Twin Ring Motegi, which the IndyCar Series used to run at Motegi, and I know the oval got damaged from that earthquake in 2011, and I'm fingers crossed at some point that that does get fully repaired, because I think NASCAR could definitely take advantage of that for sure.
Absolutely.
Because I will say, in the league I'm in iRacing, I have ran the next gen car at Motegi, and I actually had a lot of fun driving on that track. It was different. It reminds me a lot of like a flatter Darlington, but it's definitely interesting. Oh man, it'd be great if they could somehow bring this track back. It's in Australia, the old Calder Park Thunderdome.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because that was totally inspired from Charlotte, how they built that track, and NASCAR had a race there in the late 80s. That was their first ever international race of any kind, I believe, was out there in Australia. Yep. I think Neil Bonnet won that race, so I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so I did get that right. Ha, all right.
Yeah, that was in the middle of a 3-win stretch.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Which fun thing is that I think the first technically the first international NASCAR race was actually held in Canada back in 1958. And I know that because it was actually Richard Petty's first ever Cup Series event. That's something that no one really likes to bring about. But, at the same time, it was in Canada. That's just north of the border. So it's like, at the same time, Australia and Japan, that's something, totally different. That's overseas.
Wow, yeah, I didn't know that, honestly. That's kind of cool, actually. Yeah, that's wow, I didn't realize that was his first ever race. Because I know he ran in the first Daytona 500 in 1959, but I did not know that. That's, wow, that's pretty cool. It's kind of like, they talk about, I can't believe we're racing in a stadium like the LA Coliseum. And, I'm not just bringing up Bowman Gray Stadium, but NASCAR had a race inside Soldier Field way back in the 50s. They had a race in there. So, yeah, I mean.
Oh, I'm looking it up now. That race was actually held in a stadium.
What? Really?
Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, Exhibition Stadium. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that stadium had an interesting look to it. Let me see if I can look it up, because the way that stadium looked, and I could believe that a race was held in there. Yeah. This is interesting. So how they did it was they have the football field, right? And it looks like it's a football field. It's set up. I'm going to try and describe this the best way I can, because obviously the CFL has the Toronto Argonauts. But if you look at a picture of it, they literally put in the outfield wall, I want to say at like the 35-40 yard line, and you could see the seating and field still extend, but they cut it off with the outfield wall to use it for baseball, instead of like the cookie cutter stadiums that we had in America with, Cincinnati had Riverfront Stadium, St. Louis had Bush Memorial, Philadelphia had Veterans Stadium. It would just be like, the seats would move and then you can just slap the football field right there. So, yeah, I remember, I've heard about Exhibition Stadium. Very unique place.
Yep. And the crazy thing is that it wasn't even an exhibition event. It was a points-paying cup race. And so everyone's and to talk about how there's never been a points-paying cup race internationally. Yes, there has. They did one in Canada back in 1958.
How about that? That is crazy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, July 8, 1958. Richard Petty made the first of 1,184 starts in the NASCAR Grand National Series in a race at the grandstand entitled the 1958 Jim Midian 500. Today, the roads of Exhibition Place are used for the IndyCar Honda Indy Toronto race, and since 2010 has hosted the NASCAR Penny Series. Huh.
Yeah, so there's a fun fact for everybody listening.
There you go. A little piece of history there. I love goofy stuff like that. It's kind of like, I forgot which episode it was, because I brought up that Des Moines, Iowa randomly hosted a street race for ARCA back in 1994. I remember we talked about that recently. I forgot which guest it was. I apologize. But, yeah, it's stuff like that you just appreciate, and you look back and you're like, that's crazy. I didn't know that actually happened. So, you just love stuff like that. There's probably a lot more history out there that, we don't know of, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we're looking forward to the races at Bristol. I'm not sure if there's anything else left to talk about at the moment. Obviously, we kind of covered some of the recent news and kind of the crazy stuff that's been happening lately.
Yep. I guess we can go into our picks for Bristol.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. Let's do that. So, obviously, you could say that, you could go with a dirt ringer. But, Logano won it in 2021. And Kyle Busch won it in 2022 on that insane finish between Reddick and Chase Briscoe. Of course, we also got the trucks. Can't forget the trucks. So,
So, for the trucks, man, I kind of want to go with somebody like Tanner Carrick, just because I love seeing the sprint car guys go out there and duke it out with the big boys of stock car racing. I don't know. just from how he's been doing this year and the experience that he's gotten in dirt, honestly, I think I'm probably going to go with Carson Hocevar to get 2 in a row.
Okay.
He's obviously started driving a lot more midget stuff, micro stuff, and dirt late models. So he's been getting a lot better at this dirt stuff, and he almost won this last year. I think he was a few laps away from winning it. So I'm saying that he finishes the job this year.
Okay.
And for the Cup Series, man, you know what? I think this is the year that we finally see a dirt wiener get it done. I think Chase Briscoe gets it. I think he gets it this year.
Yeah, he came very close to doing so last year.
Yeah.
I think he could certainly do it.
They're obviously coming off a very good weekend at Richmond,
Mm-hmm.
so everybody knows that momentum builds.
Yes, it does.
And he's obviously heading to a track that he's obviously very good at, and he came so close to winning this last year. So I think he gets it done.
Mm-hmm. So looking at go ahead.
Just kind of as a dark horse pick, I'm just going to say Jonathan Davenport. Don't count him out. This may be his first Cup start, but the dude is a beast on the dirt tracks.
Yeah.
Do not count him out.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. I will note, too, for the truck race, we do have some Cup guys running in it. We have Joey Logano driving for Thor Sport. We have Chase Briscoe with AM Racing. And William Byron driving for Kyle Busch Motorsports in the 51 truck. So those guys could certainly be favorites. We saw Martin Truex Jr. step in 2021. I don't think he ever drove a truck race at that point and went out there and won. So anything's possible for sure.
Yeah.
Looking at picks, oh man, there's some good ones. I like your Carson Hocevar pick, but I'm going to go with, and it's probably more of a safe bet, but he's just been on fire lately. I'm going to go with William Byron to win this truck race. Knowing that he's entered with KBM, he's going to be a threat. He's definitely going to be a threat. So I definitely like his chances for the truck race. And looking at the Cup race, again, can't go wrong with guys like Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe. You can't go wrong with those guys. As for my pick, I think, he won last week, and again, he could be riding some momentum. I think Kyle Larson gets it done. I know that sounds like a, shocker kind of pick, but, something just tells me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so with that being said, I think that will wrap things up here from the Dropping the Hammer Racing Hour podcast. So obviously, check us out on YouTube at Gray Speed Productions. Check us out on Spotify as well. And of course, Michael, good luck with all the moving. Hope it all goes well.
Thank you.
Up to Indianapolis. Yep, no problem. And that'll do it. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition. From Michael Klein and myself, Alex Gray, we're signing off, and we will see you next time.
All right, see ya.